Uh-oh. Malfunction. Let's try this again. Sploosh! Sorry about that. It's Friday! Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host and co-host Kiki. Disembodied Hands, Quindy, Disembodied Beard, John, the usual cast of characters, right? And Kiki is definitely a character. You don't want to get up again, huh? No, you just want to sit here and have pets and wags? David is home today, so she's been standing outside of his door going, bark, bark. Yeah, just like that. Yeah, I know. No teeth. No teeth. No teeth. No teeth, Bubba. Work. Work. Good girl. Yeah, you know we're gaming nerds when we use the Warcraft orc, thing to tell you that it's time to just settle down. Yes. Silly dog. So very brief Kiki sighting today. She's sulking because David won't let her into his office, so. And he's home because Overwatch League finals. Woo! One of our teams won yesterday and one of our teams lost yesterday, so. But you know, it is what it is. Oh, I remember the swap me for a trout line, yeah. All right, let's see here. We're going to work on the hair and the scales today, I believe. And I was thinking about blocking in the shells as a light color. Just continually to pull the eye upward on this piece, which has a lot going on. But I'm happy with the dark anchor. Henrik, you mentioned doing metallics on it. I could do that. It would, we could do some good corrosion on it that way, and I wouldn't have to stress too much about the NMMs. It would be a little bit different, difficult in a way, just because I'd have to do the shade of metallics that way. But yeah, maybe we'll do that. I'll have to use a black metallic. Might even use the crow feather metallic. Even though it's a little bit off, it's technically not an iron color. What's up? Oh, she's standing outside his door whining. What a pathetic sad dog. Settle down, Papa. Work. It's work time. Just because Daddy's home doesn't mean you get to sit there and go ooh, 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 outside of his door. Just like that, really. She's like, are you making fun of me? Are you making fun of me, Mama? I am making fun of you, you squeaky little thing. Yes, I am. All right. Now, go settle down. Yeah, it's work time. It's work time. Yes, the weekend comes after this, and the dog walker is coming. Your dog sitter is coming to walk you today. I don't even have to. Thumbs up. Yeah. So that's Kiki today. She's just sulky. Go and settle down, Bubba. Let us thinking about it. I'm thinking about my color comp. If I go with a golden undertone for the shells, then it'll help with the purple. It'll bounce back and forth with the purple because yellow. So I think maybe we'll do something funky. Let's see, what have I got? Oh, we haven't used oiled leather for a long time, if ever. It's not a color I normally reach for. Then let's grab Osirian, but be ready to drop some yellow into it. Where's a good yellow? I think sun. So I don't want something too bright. I reach for sun yellow. You guys see me reach for lantern yellow a lot. If I want a lot of saturation, I'm going to pop lantern in there. Here, though, I want to end up with more of a cream, like orangey yellow cream, to work off of the blue and the purple on the model. So essentially, if I do this, if you go straight from like that orangey brown, this happens with rich leather also. If you go straight to an off-white or a white, you're going to see it wash out. You get really kind of minty, pasty kind of look, right? So then you have to bring that golden pop back in. And if you use something like lantern, you risk going too far very easily because it's such a hyper-saturated color. Whereas sun yellow is still a fairly vibrant yellow, but it doesn't have nearly that punch, and so it's a good choice for this sort of thing. So just to kind of tell you my thought process on this. So I think I'm going to do that. I think whatever color I make, though, we're going to use on the sign banner as well as that, because repeating. And it'll also be the right color probably for the foam. So we'll be able to repeat that color around the model. It also saves us some mental work because it's, essentially making those decisions for us. So, hey, anything that spares me mental work, I'm good. So I'm going to back out and we'll try to mix this. I haven't used rich leather for this, old leather for this before. So it is a very, I don't know if you guys know, but this is one of the most pigmented colors in MSP. Because you have to load so much pigment in to get it to where it is, to match that Pro Paint color using our bases. The old Pro Paint yellow base didn't have nearly as much yellow pigment in it as our current yellow base does. So it takes a lot more pushing to get it to go to this color, essentially. Kiki, settle. Settle or you're exiled. Quit being a brat and settle down. We'll see if she keeps it up. If so, she is out. Kiki is pretty but bratty. David took her on his walk to get his pastry this morning. That was the walk she got. So she got very stimulated. Oh, wow. Blob. Well, that came out in a big blob. Well, all right. I guess we've got that. I'm going to try to mitigate that a little. I might also need a little bit of like a blue or a purple or a black in there to cut if it's too saturated. So I'm going to add my Osirian sand to it and just see what we get. It's probably going to paste out a little bit. Go pasty. Pasty and unhealthy. Oh, I rebase coated my my Moonlight Minis Barbarian again. I decided I didn't like the skin tone the second time and I rebase coated it. This is an illustration in point because I love the model so much I want it to be awesome. So this is a case in point of what I always tell you guys with acrylic paints. It's like, you can paint over it. You can paint over it probably 5 or 6 times with different colors until you hit the right thing, right? So this is my third try, and actually it seems to be working out. Because David pointed out to me that it was very desaturated, and I was like, oh yeah, it is. Maybe I need to actually do a saturated skin tone. So maybe I'll do a little mix to show you guys what I mean later on. This is actually a very saturated skin tone. It's got a very vibrant pinky, purpley undertone. Maybe, Pendrake, maybe. I mean, rope is usually more washed out than that, but I could shade with it. I'm just going to mix it up real quick and see what we look like. There's my mixing brush. But yeah, it's possible that this would make a good starting rope color. Yeah, it would. This would be a good starting rope color, but you see what I mean? It went all kind of pasty. It doesn't, and it's not yellow. It's not golden enough for my liking, for what I want. So I'm just going to keep playing with it. I'm going to put a drop of yellow in. That's going to make it a little more vibrant. Then I'm going to pop, yeah, that actually brought some of the life back into it. Now I'm going to pop more of my Osirian sand in. I think this is close, though. I might actually base with this. Although I don't think this is a good foam color. Foam color needs to be a little more golden, I think. More ochre-y. So, do I keep this? I might keep this. I actually have done horns and parchment with an undercoat like this before. It is very orange. What you end up having to do is having to shade it a bit with like a brown, but this is very close to a Vallejo color I used to really like, which is called beige brown. I actually think I still have a bottle of it over here. It's a lighter version of it. So beige brown is darker, but it's still got that kind of orangey yellowy. It's like almost like a more saturated shield brown in a way. But I used to use this and like mixes of it in parchment on confrontation models back in the day. So I think we'll do this because if we don't like it, if it proves to be too orange or too weird or too wrong, we can always glaze. It's just a glazing lesson. You just realized something. ... Suspense, Thormel. Suspense. You're as bad as the blacksmithing reality show, when it's like, I wasn't sure if it was going to work, and then they cut to a commercial break. And you're like, yes. Oh, yay! Oh, it's the song, Papa. It's the song, Papa. She probably won't care because she's sulking. Double sub-anniversary, double sub-anniversary, double sub-anniversary. Happy double sub-anniversary. There you go. Congrats, Thormo. All right, we're going to base coat with this and see. It's going to be very orange, but the orange is actually going to play nicely off of the blue. And if we bring up the highlights and more golden, it's going to play off of the purple. So I'm okay with that. Let's just try it. If we don't like it, we change it. It's easy. Just paint over it, folks. Just make sure you're thinning your paint a little bit, which I'm going to do right now by dropping a drop of water into it. Boop. But I'm going to keep it pretty thick. I want a nice solid coat right out the gate. Thankfully, there's a fair amount of white in this thanks to the Osirian sand. Sun Yellow has a little bit of white in it as well, and Oiled Leather has a bit of white in it as well. So it's all there. All that opacity headed our way. So let's try this out. Okay, I will have to put 2 coats on it, but that's my usual MO. Let's get in focus. Boop. Ooh, we're very close now. Very close. Too close! Do, 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 do. It's going to be real close to her skin tone at first, but that's okay. This is just the shadow color, hypothetically. This might be the mid-shadow. We might go down. I think we're going to go down just a little bit. And we're definitely going up a lot. But the color isn't clashing with anything. It's reading kind of neutral, which is what I want. So I think we're going to bring in a brown that's a little darker, mix it with this, and use it as its darkest shadow. Because although it's the right range I want, it's not quite dark enough to be a convincing shadow for the white or to bring out the details of this shell here. So I'm going to back up actually just a little bit because it's hard to stay in camera. Camera range, when I'm that close, it's too easy to move out of frame. And you can see that that's fairly opaque because it covered up that blob on the other shell pretty handily. So I had a cool thing, and I don't know if it's coincidence, so we'll see if it is moving forward, but I was analyzing my book, because I'm always looking at my books, right? Analyzing my book sales, and I was thinking about my keywords a lot, because when I started out on this journey, I really thought I was writing a fairy tale retelling, right? I thought that was my genre. That was the genre that I had in my head that I was like, yeah, this is what I'm writing. Like, it is. It's based on East of the Sun and West of the Moon. At least Sola's Journey is, right? Actually, now you guys know, since the books are out, if you haven't read the books, you should close your ears. Giving you an option to close your ears. But essentially, I asked myself what would happen if the original people in the original East of the Sun and West of the Moon had not actually broken the curse. What would happen to their descendants? And that was how I essentially came up with that story. The what ifs. What ifs are great for developing stories. But so I was sitting there going, I have a fairy tale retelling. And what I didn't realize at that time, but I came to realize over the last several months, is that fairy tale retelling is dominated by romance. And my book is not a romance. Not at all. And so as I watched my sales, and Amazon ads were key to me figuring this out, because I was just poking around with them, you know, like you do when you're learning the platform. But I noticed that my sales were coming, like my ads were working, not hardly at all in fairy tale retelling, but they were working in coming of age fantasy. And when I was hitting bestseller lists, it was classifying me in children's and teen coming of age. So I started rethinking. Confetti, that's cool. So I started rethinking it. I'm like, am I really a fairy tale retelling? And the more I did it, because I ran the same set of ads in the UK, the more I looked at it, the more I was like, I am not actually. When I started really diving into that, I'm like, because genre is weird. Like, the way that bookstores do genre is different from the way we think of genre. Like, we can think of a book very generally in genre, but when a reader is looking for a book, they're looking for a very specific thing in a specific genre. And so because fairy tale retelling is so full of romance books, essentially that's what people look for. That is what that genre has now become. And what I'm writing is more of a young adult or children's fantasy adventure or coming of age, which is a very traditional fantasy genre, right? I'm not dissing that genre. But what I had to realize is that one or two of my keywords were based around fairy tale retelling. And those are keywords you enter into your book. You get 7 of them. And they're not actually individual words. They're more like phrases that Amazon uses to figure out, who do I sell this book to? So they're really important. So what I did about a week ago is I changed them. I changed East of the Sun, and I went in and I took out fairy tale retelling and those references. And instead I leaned into coming of age and adventure. And my book sales over the last week, and I don't know if this is ads, I don't know if it's a fluke, I don't know if whatever, but my book sales are doubled from what they were the week before. So I'm selling like 2 books, on a given day instead of maybe 1 book, right? So I don't know if it's the keywords or not. Time will tell if this is just a fluke. It's early days, but I thought that was interesting. That's my book journey. I have to give you guys more of my book journey, Oh, VMix, yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of them, Sir Gambit. That's the thing. There are lots of non-romance fairy tale retellings, but at least on the big bookstores, on the virtual, the online bookstores, you can't classify them as that. You've got to look at, well, what is it otherwise? And my story is less of a fairy tale retelling and really more of a coming of age adventure. If I really look at the guts of it. How I wrote it, what the characters learn, it really is. So essentially, and that can be true of any fairy tale retelling. Like, you can lean into the romance, the prince and princess part, or you can lean into the adventure part, right? And that's going to change how you should classify your book on those big bookstores if you want people to see it. And that's the game, right? Is like, you can write a great book, but if you don't get people seeing it, you're never going to go anywhere. That's the challenge now. That's why marketing is the most difficult and most hated aspect of being an author. So yeah, it is very interesting. Yeah, folktale retelling. The review's still good because, some people looking for fairy tale retellings are going to be looking for fantasy adventure, right? And so, because people aren't necessarily aware of that genre, but a lot of people who go to the fairy tale retelling, bestseller lists, they are looking for more romance. So, yeah, it's just interesting. It was just an experiment. So, yeah, this orange is playing really well. Look how well that orange, plays with this. It actually is doing really, really a nice job down here. It plays off the purple because orange purple. It plays off the blue because orange blue. It's a really saturated, neutral, quote unquote. It's almost a skin tone. You could almost use it. This is what I mixed. I decided to mix something for the shells, and then I decided I wanted the shells and the parchment to be the same. So this is oiled leather with a couple drops of Assyrian sand in it and 1 drop of sun yellow agent marble to warm it up, because otherwise if you just do the old leather and then you add the Assyrian sand, it gets all pasty. It loses its saturation. So I used to use a color a lot like this to do parchment and bone, horns and stuff when I was working, back when I was painting confrontation minis back in the late 90s, early aughts. And I remembered that this morning after I mixed this color. So I was like, Reaper miniatures. But yeah, so anyway, there's the update on the book journey. Bottom line is I've actually done really well this month. I've almost sold, if I average it out over the number of days in the month, I've almost sold a book a day this month. And that part of that is the tail end of ReaperCon, right? Because ReaperCon was also in this time period. Although ReaperCon, most people were buying books from me, I think. But some people did order online during that period. So yeah, that's pretty cool. October is going to be an interesting Yeah, it is like almost a pastel, except it's not as brown. It's more almost a pastel peachy color. That's why I say you could use this as a skin tone. This is actually very close to the bright skin color, 9234. Or 9232? I've forgotten. 923233. Sorry, 33. It would be in the middle. Or something. I don't know. Oh, it's been a while, guys. It's been years since years since I actually made paint, and it's a wonder I can still remember as many of these color SKUs as I can. But yeah, so this is working really well. I like how it looks. It's not as like sometimes, although neutrals can ground a model's color scheme, sometimes they feel dead, and so they feel like not lively, right? Because they tend to be pretty bland. That's the point, right? I'm going to get into neutrals with the wood here. So there will be neutrals. But yeah, going with something a little bit more punchy for the banner and the shells, I think is going to work well. But yeah, so yay, book talk. That's where my book journey is. I'm really happy. October's going to be interesting because that's my month where I'm not running any promo. And it is not a new release month. So the sales for October are going to be more indicative of my bottom line, like average sales, just being out and running my ads. And that's a number I haven't had a chance to get yet. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that... Because that's how you can figure out your conversion rate from ads and stuff like that. So I haven't done that yet. Although my ads are really like not costing me much at all. And I mean, I'm making money, so we'll see. Anyway, I've got to do something with more pure data though, because not something that doesn't impact a release or a promo. All right, so we're gonna let that dry. I'm gonna rebase coat up here, and then we're gonna mix up a nice shadow for this. I think I'll use russet brown. I want to use a more intense brown, but that might be almost a little bit too much, so I might need to use some brown liner. I don't want to use a walnut or a blackened brown because those have a lot of black in them. They're going to green this out really fast. I talked a little bit about this, gosh, was it yesterday? Yesterday or recently on I think actually it was Marika. It was on my paint along over on my my Patreon. And hey, yes, I have a Patreon. If you've never seen my Patreon, it's out there. It's patreon.com/paintingbig. It's got almost 4 years of content stored up on it. And by God, I have it on my to-do list. I'm going to be putting together some collections, which means I'll be able to put all the color theory stuff in one place, all the hair colors in one place, you know, that kind of thing. So that is on my big to-do list for the Patreon heading into October, just to at least start getting a few of those things figured out. So yes. So what I was talking about is that if you are looking to produce a shadow color and you figure out you might need a touch of black or something close to it, I tend to reach for the liner colors instead of black or walnut or black and brown if I need a dark brown to create a shadow. And the reason for that is that those have a very, very punchy, strong, high-density black pigment in them. And even a little bit will take over your color and completely ash it out, black it out. Whereas the brown liner, the black pigment used in the liners is much more transparent, and so it's not as overbearing. And so you can usually use a brown liner or blue liner or whatever you're using to better effect without getting that, without having to fight against something that wants to just take over your color. So if I mix a brown color, it's probably going to be russet and brown liner together to create a shadow for this. Okay, so that's drying now, so I can actually rebase coat that. So it is taking 2 thin coats to get a nice solid color on this. And as we bring this up, it's very close to our skin tone right now, but as I bring the tops of these, I'm going to be bringing them up to white. So we should be able to differentiate enough. Right now, they look very close, but my intent is that they end up not looking very close. We'll see if I can carry out my intent. We also need to do the lettering, but we won't do that yet. We really want to highlight, probably at least one highlight. because highlighting around the lettering is going to be a pain in the butt. It'll be much easier if we can just highlight and shade the banner and then do our lettering. And yeah, we'll have to do some touch-ups almost inevitably, but it's still going to be easier. But yes, that's what book I've had to put a lot of time into Patreon this last week, so I haven't gotten a lot of progress on North of the Wind yet as far as the writing goes, but I think I am coming out of that, and today is the last day of the month, and I have one more video to edit and put up. So I'm itching to get back to the novel. I need to talk to my proofreader to find out if she's still on board for this one, since it's David's mom. That is not her genre. I go back and forth. I'm going back and forth as far as the publication date of book 3. I was aiming for February. It may be March. But we'll see. I'll still try to aim for February. And it really depends on how much the holidays and travel interferes with my writing schedule. Because we've got our delayed honeymoon coming up in October. That'll take me out for a week. Then we got NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo is pretty sacrosanct, except I do have that National Dog Show trip right at the beginning of it. I don't know what it is about dog stuff, but that has happened more often than I care to remember. It's just at the start of Nano, and I've got a stupid dog trip to do. But Kiki and I will go to Denver. And maybe Kiki will actually get to experience some snow. You never know. That would be nice. She's gotten to see, like, glacier snow, but she's never been actually out in, like, snow falling. Everybody's asking me what the tan color is. All right, so it's something I mixed in Ara. It is a very saturated kind of orangey peachy tan. I mixed it, and it is something very close to a color I used to use when I was painting confrontation miniatures back in the late 90s, early aughts, before Reaper. So what we did is we mixed oiled leather with a couple drops of Assyrian sand and 1 drop of sun yellow to warm it up, because it was getting pasty doing these two. So it is a custom color. It's nice. It's working really well with the model, especially the colors down here. It's an oddity. It's not something I've used recently. We are going to want to shade it. I'm going to build a shadow for it in the moment after I finish putting my second coat on this part. And we're probably going to use russet brown and brown liner to mix that shadow. But yeah, I use this because some neutrals can appear very kind of boring. They just kind of sit there. They look a little dead. I wanted something lively for this piece, so I decided to go with the oiled leather and see what I could do. I don't normally... Oiled leather by itself is not a color I enjoy using. I don't like going that orange with my leather ever. So it's a color I almost never use, but every once in a while it'll be useful. I'm going to have to redo the top here, but I'll come into that later. I need to figure out how narrow or wide I want the banner to be. I probably just need to make it really just even it up, essentially. I've got some overlapping lines here. Technically it goes back, but I don't know that I want to make it this wide, like, since I'm going to get going back and trimming it up anyway. Maybe I will. You can't really tell from the front. You'll see it from the top, but we'll just let that dry. Oh, last bottle of Field Grey, yep. Feldgrau. Wondering if I could remember how to... I mean, essentially, if you want to mix something very like it, Take, I would say, the Highland Moss Triad. I think Highland Moss itself. And maybe add, I'd have to look at it. You could get there that way, though. Because Feldgrau is really a grayish, bluish, greenish, tannish color. It's almost like adding khaki to a bluish, a slight bluish hint green. It's an odd one. It is definitely persnickety to mix, but only because you have to mix like 4 colors to get there. You need your ochre, you need your green, you need a touch of blue, and you need black and white. 5 colors, 5 pigments. Maybe brown. Depends on. But yeah, it definitely, and I was looking at one of Ed's historical caps to match that color, by the way, just so you know. Historically accurate. At least as far as that dye lot of that particular year of German cap making. All right, nice and solid. Oh, yeah. Well, you can almost just use a glaze. If you want to put more green in the stonework, you could also just try glazing with jungle moss, ancient oak, pine green, depending on how much you want it to pop down. I like jungle moss, or the old swamp green. The old swamp green used to be my go-to for that. Chestnut gold, yeah. Well, at least chestnut gold is easy to mix, Inara. Super easy to mix as long as you pick up the oxides now before somebody does something drastic over at Reaper. Like, I cannot say this hard enough, guys. Oxide yellow, oxide, or whatever, oxidized yellow, however they changed the name. Oxide brown, oxide red, pick them up. They're pure pigments, they're clear brights. If you want to be able to mix your out-of-print colors, highly recommend picking those up unless you already have the yellow and the red in like Chimera colors or whatever. If you have those colors in Chimera or in, I guess Scale Color has a yellow oxide, or a yellow ochre. Yeah. Chimera is probably the sub, I would say. But nobody else has a brown oxide like Reaper's. Reaper's brown oxide, completely different from every other brown oxide I have seen in every other company I have tried. There is nothing that's the same. And you need brown oxide to mix chestnut gold. Reaper's brown oxide. Otherwise, it gets much more complicated. It's true. All right, just so you know, though, if cancellations come down, like, have backstock, because you can, it's like, chestnut gold is literally yellow oxide with a lesser amount of brown oxide added to it and a touch of white. Just a touch to give it a little opacity so it's not transparent. So, that's what it is. But you can only mix it easily. Like, you might be able to use, like, a different brown oxide, like from Chimera, if you added some red, but it would be dicey. Yeah, and nobody else's brown oxide is the same as Reaper's, like I said. So, unique. Yeah. I know, cancellations, right? And we just don't know. So that's why I'm, like, pounding this home to you guys. I mean, we just ordered an extra 4 bottles of oxide brown. And I'm probably going to order another 6 bottles. Because, honestly, there are colors I like to mix that I have to have that pigment for. So, that be what I'm sticking to. Like everything else, a lot of other things I've learned, enough about Scale Color, Artist, and Chimera to know, all right, well, I could sub this if I had to, if Reaper canceled this, right? It wouldn't blend nearly as well, but it would work. But yeah, for the brown oxide, I did, especially because I did that, I've been doing those pigment PDFs for my Patreon that analyze the common pigments found in miniatures paints and kind of tell you about their characteristics and the way they differ, which I think are, if you're a mixer, those are very, very interesting PDFs. And many of us grow into mixers as we get more confident with our paint. There, all right. I think they're solid enough. Now let's get some shadow made. But yeah, so, I mean, $5 tier in my Patreon really is like where it's at if you are interested in Reaper paint or paint in general. You can take a lot of information that I throw out about Reaper paint and use it with almost any paint line with a similar color. And I also have PDFs on there for Chimera. I have PDFs for Scale Color. I have, I'm about to probably do some, what's the other one? The color, the red, I don't remember. That other paint line that people are into. I don't know. Anyway, I try other paint lines periodically, and I analyze them if they're popular to try to, you know, see how they compare to Reaper and to help people get a handle on them if they take more mixing or they take more thinning or whatever. So let's transfer a couple of big brushfuls over here. And then let's grab, I'm going to actually put my russet brown and my brown liner in a different well, and I'm going to add them slowly. And if you don't want to overwhelm your paint and you want to save paint and not waste too much, that's the way to go. So that's about 2 drops of russet. I'm going to drop 1 drop of brown liner into that to add just a little bit of black, but a transparent black. And I'm going to actually mix my brush straight in there. Yeah, I think that's going to be good. Essentially, russet brown is beautiful and warm, and it doesn't desaturate what you mix it with, but it also isn't quite dark enough sometimes for what I want. So that's why I'm doing this mix. Now I'm going to grab just a little bit of that on my brush tip. I'm going to transfer it over here. See how ashy it goes, even though I only used a little brown liner. But it's not too bad. That's looking actually pretty okay. Think that might work. So that's a nice brown. It's actually very close to shield brown. I might put just a little bit extra russet in there just because I think maybe my black is a little bit too strong, still even. So just a little tiny bit on my brush. Yeah, like that. There we go. That warmed it up a little bit. Yeah. Okay, that's a good off-white shadow color. If I really want to make sure, I can grab my grayscale, color wheel grayscale, and I can pop it around and kind of look at it. 6 is definitely not there. It's probably a 4 or a 5, so it might be a little thin, but remember, or a little bit too dark, but, oh, it's a 4, I think. Yeah, so you can see the value. 5 is way too much. It could be between, actually, it looks like it's a 3. Wow, so it's a little darker. The one thing to remember, though, about that is that as you thin it, it's going to lighten, right? When you thin any paint and apply it in a thinned application, it's going to dry lighter than it looks. So I'm going to play to that by using a slightly darker color than I might otherwise. I had 2 color wheels stuck together. Although I really feel, yeah, it's really, it's around a 3. So we'll see if it's too, but it'll definitely, what I'll use it for is I'll line the shells here and see how it goes. I do want it a little thinner for when I go down to the banner, but I'll wait to do that. Oh, and I will be streaming tomorrow on my personal stream at twitch.tv/paintingbig. Quindy just dropped the socials there in the chat. So we have been working on the owl bear from Adventure Cats, Quantum Minis. And we are working on the feathers. So I'm pretty happy with the way he's coming out, and we will be resuming work on him tomorrow. and I think maybe this would be fun. I was going to do little owlbear idols on his base. So I realized that I probably have enough 3D sculpting knowledge now to do those in Nomad. I think I can do them. So I may sculpt a little owlbear idol in Nomad and then try to print out a bunch of them. Yeah, so that's kind of and that'll let me actually use my sculpting chops. The sculpting chops. I do need to figure out how to do one thing, and I'll have to look it up. Because I want to be able to cut off. Like, I want to learn how to, if I have like a sphere and I want to cut part of it off. I could use the flatten tool, but that just seems like not quite the right tool. So I'm going to have to look up and see how to like actually cut parts off of a sculpt. Make a plane to separate them and stuff like that. I didn't learn that in my first tutorial. But I think I learned enough in my first tutorial to do little owlbear idols. So I will do that. And then if I do them, even if I do those smooth, I'll be able to use like a texture paint to just add a stony texture by brushing it over the top of them. And they'll probably be just fine. Or I can try to make them look like stone. I think I could maybe do that.
Hey, Papa.
Uh-oh, David's out. Papa is like, oh, it's Dad! It's Dad! She's such a daddy's girl. It's so funny. So funny. She's been sitting outside your door and whining.
Oh, poor Papa.
Yep, pathetic Papa.
Getting neglected.
Yep, neglected dog. Total dog neglected. So, as you can see, that color is actually really good for lining this orange. Oh, you saw bits of the ghoulie bag? Is it cool? Should I order stuff? Remember, we're going spooky on Monday, guys. I have to get Quindy. Oh, I need to put that on my to-dos. Hold on, Quindy. Get Quindy list of models in order. List of spooky models in order. I'm capitalizing spooky. There. Super cool. Yep, it's spooky time. Definitely spooky time. Alright. So I really like how this color looks. Lining these shells. It's a good shadow color. It is not too crazy dark. It's not too cartoony, but it's bringing out the details here, and that's exactly what I wanted it for. So that's great. That's perfect. That's a win. I did miss painting the top of this. There. So that lines up nicely. Kiki is totally a daddy's girl. And has been for a while. Let's say a great irony of my life. Is that, you know, I'm like, I want a puppy. And then it turns out to belong to my significant other. Only Kiri. Kiri was my dog. 100% my dog. Mommy was like, she's like, Dad's okay, but Mommy. Kiri totally my dog. So, still jury out on whether I would ever keep a Kiki puppy. But if I did, it would have to be a smooth coat. And it would have to have the Kiri temperament. Alright. So I'm kind of shading on the opposing side, like the downside. Like there's a little bit of it goes up and down on these little shell things. And there's a little bit of a crease there. So I'm definitely putting this color all on that side of the shell, not just lining. But that looks great. Like that's exactly what I wanted. So I'm very happy with that. Now it's time to thin this color and use it as a bit more of a shader without leaving brush strokes. So I'm going to thin it down. It is very close to Shield Brown, but it's like a slightly more saturated shield. And that's where mixing is strength. Like, I could just use Shield Brown, but it wouldn't have been quite as, like, warm and saturated as this. And so it wouldn't have looked as good. And that's where it's like, well, I have a color that's really close to that. Right, but that really close might not be what you need in the direction you're painting. So that's where mixing, like embracing mixing and learning to get comfortable with it, really benefits you. Because sometimes close is just actually not enough. Sometimes it could be better, and it could look better. So now we're shading the bottom there. You can see that shadow coming in, and it gives mass to this, and it changes the color a little bit. Since this brown that we made is a little bit more of a real neutral, it makes this color shift toward more of a neutral. which is great. Oh, and I really need to get the bottom part of each of those shells, actually. I know, right? Yeah, I mean, the color really came out great today, couldn't you? Sometimes, you know, you do that thing. Sometimes you pull it out, and you're like, let's try this, and it turns out to be the perfect thing. Like, both in cooking and mini painting, I think. Our common arts where that happens. Now, I don't have my liner out. Oh, David's making an espresso. Sorry for the loud noises. He is in need of coffee, as Crowley would say, with all caps. So I'm using my brown, my really dark brown, the one I added to this color, my brown liner plus russet brown. I use that as a kind of a stand-in liner there. It's dark enough. There you go, Crowley. Yep. David is totally of your mind. The espresso machine has paid for itself many, many times over. He bought it right after I moved in during the pandemic. And I don't even want to think about how many hundreds, perhaps even into 1,000 lattes that thing has made now. And it hasn't broken. Like, it's still going. It's a Brayville, so it's real good construction. Yes, that's what the sounds were, the espresso machine. Espresso makes more sense. Quindy wondered if you were drilling a hole in metal because of all the noises. But espresso makes more sense. He's... Yes, I told them what you were doing, but still it's funny. Oh, hi there. Oh, hi there, Quindy. Or, not Quindy. Kiki and Quindy. This is the problem, Quindy. This is a big problem with your dog, your name and my dog's name now. I was presented with a ball strap. Oh, and now somebody wants to play tug. No, go with Dad. Go with Dad. It's the darn Kiki LaRue thing. That's the problem. It's like, now it's, I'm going to be confused for the rest of our existences. I'm going to be calling you Kiki 5 years from now. But yes, all right. Let's try not to do that as much as possible, though. I mean, I love my dog and everything, but you really don't need her name. And I'm going to add a little water to this brown that I made, because it is, I didn't add water to it, because I mixed it just to add it to this other color, but I want it to stay thinner since I am using it to line a little bit here and there. Nope. Oh, wow. I wish we were getting rain. I mean, we had one rainy day, kind of a weird oddity. The only downside to them is that my allergies like destroy me for a couple days afterwards because mold.
Papa, I need to go to work.
Uh-oh.
I need you to not be there with me.
Oh no, Papa, you're getting exiled. Oh no. Now she's going to have a sad. David just kicked her out of his room again. Oh, poor Papa. Everybody feels sad for the sad Papa. She's squeaking. Whinies. We've got whinies. Still working, Papa. We're work. There we go. So I got those little bits at the bottom of the shell, the foot of the shell, where the hinge would be. And I got those lined, and that's coming along. Yes, you're less furry and you jump on me a lot less. Appreciated. Kiki, settle. Come on, it's fine. He didn't get, like, aliens did not steal him. He's just in the other room. Ba. You're okay. Your head is immense, by the way. How did we get such a huge head on this tiny dog that we brought home? Huh? Why is your head so huge? You're so huge. Yeah, you're a good girl. You can come up and say hi to the stream if you want. Do you want to come up? Or do you just want pets? She's just like leaning her head on my leg right now with her head pressed up against me, guys. This is so cute. So cute. Yeah, oh, it's a good girl. You're also drooling on my shirt. Thanks for the drool. Little dog. Yeah, thanks for the droolings. Do you want to come up? Okay. Yeah, there's my dog. Kiki sighting, Mark II. She really just wants to play, though. Yeah, no nibbles. Nope, no nibbles. When the teeth come out, you get exiled. Bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye. Nope. Nope. No noms. Total nomming. Yeah, she's still such a puppy. She has like moments of maturity, but they're very brief. Very brief. I think we're gonna have to wait till she's 3 to really get mature Kiki. And even then, I think she's always gonna have a little bit of puppy brain. It's just her personality. All right, let's shade the other side of this now. And the layering brushstroke, even though technically it's I haven't checked my consistency, but it's close. So I'm going to be going from where I want it to be lightest, pulling down to where I want it to be darker. Because when I lift up my brush, there's going to be a little bit of heavier pigment that's left down there. See that? Dark. And that's the layering brush stroke. So where the start of your stroke is much lighter, so you use that as your transition from the one color to the other. And then as you move down, it gets darker. Okay. So those look great. Mostly you don't chew on people. It's a wonder my Fitbit band hasn't been chewed through yet. She loves to try to chew on it because it's gummy. There we go. So that looks really nice. The shading on that, really, really, really nice. I like it. I like it. Yeah, this is looking good. All right, so now let's shade the banner. Oh, and check on the dog to make sure she's not being a total pain in the butt. Please don't be a total pain in the butt, Bubba. So where I would tend to put shading, and you can see it. You can see that there's a slight pocket of shadow here, and you can see that there is a slight pocket of shadow like right here and a bit here. So we're going to pay attention to that as we do this. I'm going to actually just put a little bit of a marker. And I think a little less so, but we can put some here. You want to kind of get a ripple effect. So if you can go from mid to shadow to mid to shadow to mid, that is good. And here I usually put something in the middle. And we will have, of course, there's notches in the banner here. We'll bring in a little bit more heavy shadow for those. We're going to shade the outside edge as it moves away. We're going to shade the back part, except for the top little bits. I'm probably going to shade a little bit to the back of this to make it kind of blend out of the eye a little easier. Even though technically it's facing up, it's also just a filler, so I don't necessarily want it to be full strength up here. That looks a little better. Anything that's on the top or back is going to get shaded. So you can see how that shading is coming in, already giving dimension. We haven't even like really done anything. We've only put one layer on, but it looks better. Exiled. So a little bit more shading. I don't want to go too strong down on the shadow here, but I want it to be there. Oh, you running away? Oh my gosh, early meeting. Bye. Bye, Crowley. We'll miss you. Well, Crowley's just your tester. It's the instead of a canary, you have a hamster to make sure your settings are turned off. Alrighty, so let's get the shading more down on here. And remember, if I go too dark here, It's super easy just to glaze over it and bring it back up. Yeah, that's the way that I would do it. So like another painter might do it a different way. They might just bring up their highlights more, or they might paint their mid over the top and use the fact that it is darker, that it'll make their mid a little darker. There's various ways to do this. I'm a glazer, and I always forget that other people don't like ubiquitously use glazing like I do. Like David. David's not a glazer. The wet palette kind of fights you on it, so I can see why. Alright, so let's get a little bit more shadow down here. And up here. And look at how much dimension that's already putting in there. And this is all under, so it's going to get a layer of that shadow color. But yeah, you can see, this is the great thing about Christine's sculpts, in my opinion, is it's very smooth, it's very flowing, and everything is very clean. And so it almost does your work for you in some ways. Bobby's stuff is very similar, but I think Christine even is more so. But yeah, look at how pretty that is. Like, it's just pretty. It's just so pretty. I'm very pleased. And we're going to get this with the shadows. I need to check my messages. I saw my phone blink. Sorry. Normally I wouldn't, but since I have a... Kiki's dog walker is coming today, so I'll make sure if he texts me, I get it. Oh, Kiki, you have food sitting outside. That's okay. It's got cold packs in it. It'll be fine. All right. So I think that's pretty good. I'm going to do a little bit more shading down here. There is a little bit of blotchiness that I'm getting from the shadow color in some places, and if I wanted to, I could glaze it, but I think I'm going to wait and glaze at the end after I put some highlights on. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit more up here. Sometimes I do like to put a shadow just right under the top edge if I feel like the top edge is curling over and I want to accentuate that feel. Uh-oh, luminous green has solidified. And it didn't send you a notification either. If only our paints could send us notifications. Hello, I need some water added to me. Otherwise, I'm turning to sludge. Please shake me. You haven't shaken me in a long time. That kind of thing. Except then our notifications would be constantly full because so many of us have hundreds of paints. And we'd be neglecting all of them. So maybe not such a great idea. I'm surprised that like Paint Rack doesn't have that sort of notification that you could set to say, hey, remind me to shake up all my paints in this particular series on this day 2 years from now. You know, that would be funny. Yeah, so it's plugified then in Aura. I mean, you could try to stir it up with a toothpick. Sometimes... or the butt end of a brush if you are lacking in toothpicks. Sometimes you can catch it while it's still goop before it has latexed, but if it is a firm, rubbery block, you will never get it back in solution and it is dead. Have a funeral and put the poor thing out of its misery. You ain't getting it back in there. I actually wouldn't even do the paint shaker first. If it's really solid, if it's really sludgy, the paint shaker won't do it in Aura. I actually would manually go in with a toothpick and try. And that's going to tell you right away if it's totally rubberized or if there's still a little bit of, like, if it's just really thick sludge. If it's really thick sludge, you have a hope, but it's going to be much easier if you stir it first and then put it on the paint shaker. Because you're going to be giving it more areas for the water to agitate. If you, like, essentially scrape through that plug and open it up a little bit, it's going to work a lot better. Especially if it's really close to dead. That, you know, you could just try it in the paint shaker. If it comes back, it comes back. But if not, definitely toothpick. Yeah, something that you can actually pop the lid and the nipple off and actually stir it. Because if it doesn't stir, if you're poking into it and it's like a piece of cork, you're done. But if you can get it to move, then it's still somewhat particulate. It's not fully latexed. You may be able to bring it back with the paint shaker. You may have to do it repeatedly and you know, do a lot of manual stirring and repeatedly shaking, but you might be able to do it. It really depends on how out of solution it is. Like once it's past a certain point, you would need we would need an industrial strength like mixer, which isn't made for miniatures paints in the bottle. No. Settle down. Settle down or exile, Bubba. You got two choices. She's like, Mama always wrecks my fun. There we go. All right. I want to get my shading really, really doing. Yeah, anything like that. You know what I mean. Yeah, custom agitator for your Dremel. Yeah, people have done that. Yeah. But, again, if it's too close to latexing, if it's too firm of a plug, there isn't going to be enough, like, velocity. Like, there isn't going to be enough, like, the water can't really get a foothold in there when it's shaking around. So, like, if it's quite solidly plugged, it would take forever. Like you might get a little bit off the top every time you shake it, but it's not going to get down into that mass. And that's why I say get down in there with a toothpick, open it up, like scrape the toothpick through the sludge, break it up, then put it on your mixer. You're going to get a lot better results a lot faster if it's still salvageable. All right, let us get a highlight mixed up. I'm going to grab a little bit of my paint again, pull it over to a new thing, and grab my Osirian sand. Love my Osirian sand. I ordered lots extra of that too. That actually comes from our first Kickstarter, Twistedoma, or first or second Kickstarter. They reused it for the hotel booking line, but it was actually from the excitement of the first Kickstarter. So now I'm like coming up here, but I feel like I need it to be a little bit more yellow. Again, it's going pasty on me, and I want it to be a little warmer, so I'm going to grab my Sun Yellow again. I'm going to put just a little bit in there. But yeah, it's because our first Kickstarter was so exciting to watch that people were just like sitting at their keyboards hitting F5 constantly. I was doing it on my phone. All right, so just a little bit of Sun Yellow, and that's a lot better. And I'm going to use this color. It's still a little orangey, but it is much more parchmenty. I'm going to thin that way down because I added a lot of white. Non-toxic does not mean food grade trash. Alright, so I had two options here. I can thin this down and do layering to bring this up, or I can do a lot of spot wet blends with my original color here. I'm going to thin this down to make sure that it stays good. Yeah, my allergies are still a little bad from the rain the other day, but we shall persevere. So that's my triad that I've been using on this banner. So we'll now start adding a highlight, which is much more yellow, you notice. I mentioned that the yellow and the highlights would probably work with the hair, and that's what I'm aiming to do. This may not be thin enough. I feel like it's not going to be. So I'm going to try it and see. So I'll try it down here on the edge. and see if I can get a smoother blend. So that's actually working pretty well. I can see brush strokes a little bit, but I'll be able to reverse blend that with the application of the other. So if I've got that edge coming up very nicely, but I can still see brush strokes, I grab a little bit of my original base coat color and I do from the opposite direction to try to blend that in. I think I'm on just a little bit more water though. I'm going to put just a little bit more water into that highlight color. We'll try to get it a little bit closer to great layering. Hey, Daffodweir. Oh, you've got the F5 Sophie mug on Zazzle? Yeah. It is a great mug. Yeah, because when that first Kickstarter started going, we were all so excited. We were all just sitting around hitting F5 on our phones or computers, whatever we were at. Because nobody expected it to do that. Nobody expected it to blow up. So I picked up a little bit of my original color on my brush so that I could blend. Hi, Kiki. Yeah, hi. Hi, Kiki. No, you gotta just hang out, Bubba. Sorry, another Kiki fur on my brush. Hold on. You can tell because it's got a wavy. Can I get it to a point where you can see it? Yeah, there we go. It's got little waves in it. Little waves of Kiki fur. No, Bubba. Go settle. Work. It's not time yet. And when it is time, your dog walker is going to be walking you, not me. Yeah. CJ's going to come and walk you. He'll regret it, I'm sure. Yeah. You gotta wait though, Papa. Settle down. So I'm gonna bring it up around this little notch because since that's frayed and ripped, the edges are probably curling. So I can take that assumption, I can bring out that detail by getting that highlighted. Yeah, go settle, Bubba, or I'm going to exile you. It's not time yet. Your dog clock is off today. Yeah, your dog clock is totally off. So I'm using the side of my brush just to line the top part. Quick edge highlight. Bubba, why? If you're going to be disruptive, I'm kicking you out. Yeah, if you're going to be disruptive, I'm kicking you out. She's like, your office is so much more exciting than being out in the other room with my bully stick. All right, so we're not going to care about lettering. We're going to go right over the top of it. I'm going to use the edge of my brush to hit the bottom edge of the banner as well, especially where it's going to be kind of sagging, bulging outward. And I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight down the middle there. And of course there's still little slashes in there, so I can bring those up with a little bit of a highlight. And we'll do dark lettering, but we're going to save that for close to the end. So as I mentioned earlier, it's much easier to do your general highlighting and shading, ignoring the lettering, then put the lettering in. Because when you try to highlight and shade around all those little letters, one, it tends not to read quite right because you're having to dodge all that other material. And so you may not be able to kind of depict the shapes as they are as well, because you're trying to highlight every inside and outside of these little letters. So it's just, and then, you know, just the fact that you've got to dodge around all those letters. If you really want to increase your brush control, you can do it, but it's really glutton for punishment approach, I think. If you get chalky, which, you know, you're working with a lighter color, then go back to your mid or your shadow and do a glaze. Huh. 27 is a stretch. I would look up oldest dog record. Trash. For all I know, there's a Chihuahua out there that did live to 27. But the fact is that there's so many other factors other than what you feed your dog that go into that. Genetics and other aspects of the environment being chief among them. Oh yeah, 30 in a tropical setting? Right, but how many? Yeah, that's a vanishingly small sample size, right? One dog. Out of how many dogs, right? Starting to highlight. You can see how everything is starting to come up. It looks really shiny. Let's back up a little bit here. Now we are running into the fact that this is very warm down here and is pulling attention a little bit. But when we look at the model face on, it's not quite as bad. But we're going to have to maybe do something about that as we go, because that is a really warm color and is definitely pulling attention. So we may need to apply its complement. We may need to apply a little bit of blue to shift it. 31 and in Portugal. So what that dog food brand probably has is that there are a couple dogs that have lived that long that are currently on the food, and the owners probably wrote to the company saying, thank you, my dog is still alive. And so the dog food company was like, hey, dude, we can advertise this. Except that, you know, what they're not telling you is that it's like a 0.0000001% of dogs on their food actually live that long. And I don't know, when Kiri was getting older, it was okay until they start to really lose like some functionality, and then you wonder if they're still enjoying their lives. Like they can't communicate with us. Like a human can, right? If they could live that long with good quality of life, that would be awesome. So a little bit of that. Yeah, smaller dogs do tend to live a little bit longer. Just like cats can live to, be in their 20s and probably even 30s. There's probably a cat out there that has lived that long. It's just smaller system. Certain stresses are a little less, I suspect. But I don't know. With my dogs, I am very happy to have like Thorny almost made it to 14 and Kiri almost made it to 13, and that's pretty good. And Kira was definitely losing her eyesight toward the end. And a little bit of her hearing, I think, too. And Leo was deaf by the time he passed. And that was hard. Alrighty. So just bringing up more highlights, more highlights. I might hit this. I could hit it with a glaze now, but if I want to change all the color, then I'm going to finish highlighting it. And I might hold off. Like, even though this is distracting right now, I haven't finished stuff up here. So it might become less distracting as I fill everything else out. Like, I haven't highlighted the skin with its final highlight yet, right? So that might change things. But the skin is a little cooler. It's a little farther from yellow. So we'll have to play it by ear and think about it. And also, this is more finished as far as like level of what I've done to it than some of these areas. So I only ever did that trash when I worked with a paint that had low adhesion. I find it completely unnecessary with Master Series paint. I used to do it, however, when I worked with Vallejo, because I would thin to the point where, and I would use it. I think I would do the same thing with when I work with Chimera or Scale Color artists, because I find that I thin a lot more than a lot of painters do, and the adhesion does suffer at that point if you are working with a paint that does not have a high acrylic content or equivalent. Essentially, the thicker, higher coverage paints do not have the type of resin that gives you high adhesion at a highly thinned state. So when I painted with Vallejo, I absolutely dull coated between every layer, or at most every 2 layers. With MSP, I never do. It's not necessary. It's a very high acrylic base. It's made to stick, because that was the thing that annoyed me the most about Vallejo and other paints like it. So when I set out to create Master Series, adhesion was one of the top things on my list. I did not want a paint that was going to peel off or chip off when you sneezed at it. I did not want to have the paint that people had to seal between layers. Like, it was unnecessary. It just totally does not need to happen. All right, so that helps a little bit, bringing that up. I still have to bring it up to white. And we haven't gotten our eyes done. So there's tightening to be done up here that will probably bring this area up into a contender for this. I do think I'm going to end up hitting this with a little bit of a blue glaze. But we'll get there. And that's just going to knock it down just enough. But yeah, so the answer is it depends on your painting style. If a paint is really poor adhesion, then you might have to seal even if you're not thinning to my extent. But then that paint, like what's the only advantage you're getting then is like high coverage. Like, that's the sort of paint that tends to need that, because it's a much softer base when it cures. More transparent the base, the harder the base will cure in general. Not always. It doesn't mean that, and I'm not talking the paint, because you can have a transparent quote-unquote color that's made in a softer base. So the only way you're going to notice it is the amount of rub-off that you get when you're handling the model. Yeah, I never do it anymore with MSP. I thin more than, I think I thin probably, like, the consistency of my paints is thinner than, I would say, like, probably 95% of the, like, top level painters out there. Like, Rhonda, I know, thins like I do. But she's the only one I can think of as far as, like, really high level painters that, like, works with paint on the thinnest level that I do all the time. Most of the time when I talk to painters about adhesion, they just don't see it because they're working with their paint a lot thicker than I am. Yeah, well, anybody who watches me paint, there's a chance that you guys kind of just adopt what I do or try it and it works for you, right? So, but a lot of painters, especially ones who are doing wet palette, they're not thinning to that extent because they can't on a wet palette. It'll just get sucked back into the sponge. It's not made for that, right? So they're working with thicker paint, which means they're not going to notice the adhesion issues as much. So if you're working with thicker paint, you probably won't need to seal between layers. And anybody who does, I kind of like wonder then, like, why and what brand, I guess, and like how they're painting that's leading to them needing to do it. Like, it doesn't surprise me with Master Series if you're doing, like I said, if you're painting like me, if you're painting really thin. But other lines, if they're using a wet palette, unless of course they're really are thinning their paint on the wet palette, if they are putting a lot of water in that wet palette, if it's very, very wet, it just tends to be really hard to do that on a wet palette. At that point, I'm questioning why you aren't switching to a well, if that's the way you want to paint, because it's just going to enable you more. Ah, yes, you'll need to work with it, Inara. Add some flow improver maybe. Can help a little, I think. And stir it up as much as you can, then put it on your shaker, then revisit, open it. You'll probably still have clumps. You're going to have clumps for a while. You have to work with it back and forth. But it should, yeah, if it's peanut butter, it should be able, just like peanut butter, it should be able to go back into consistency. Right, exactly. Well, I'm using thin paint even when I'm painting for gaming, to be fair, but not quite as thin as like I'm doing here, where I want translucent layers. I want a display model. But yeah, that's the only reason I can think of to seal between layers is if you're noticing a lot of rub off with the paint line you're using, and usually that's going to be a thicker paint that's made for higher coverage, and it may vary. Like, if you use Scale Color Artist at a decent like level of like thickness, you won't notice rub off problems. But I notice rub off problems with it because I thin it down to like thin Master Series consistency. So I've talked with people who use Scale Color who don't see the rub off ever, but they're using it much thicker than I am. I just like thin paint and I cannot lie. So getting some of that light up there. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, that's exactly. Yep. Yeah, metallics do tend to settle out, and so because a flake is heavier than water, right? So it makes sense. What do we got? We got almost time to call the stream. That's what we got. Because I was on time today. So we've got it going on. It's getting there. This one looks a little bit, isn't as distracting as this one because this one has more of the midtone on it. Whereas this one, I put that big shadow area down the middle. So we're losing some of that orange on this one. That's why they look two different colors. This is a great example of surface control where if you highlight too much over, you lose your midtone. That's what this is. That's what happened here. However, that's actually a good thing as far as like just looking at the overall because as I mentioned, I want it to not be totally distracting. So I want to lose a little bit more of that orange color, I think. I thought about doing mugs. I can do merchandise now on Patreon. I have it unlocked. But I was just like, well, would anybody even want one? You know, that kind of thing. Plus, it's like, it's the kind of merch where I have to pay up front for it. Patreon just essentially gets me a discount on the items, but I have to pay for the items and then have to sell the items. And so it's less attractive than the Zazzle model or something. Yeah, so I wasn't willing to do it, take a chance on it because it's just like only a couple people probably would want a Painting Big mug or a Painting Big shirt. It would seem like making merch for myself, right? So I could wear my Painting Big shirts to the conventions. And again, honestly, I could do one on Zazzle, not have to pay up front, probably get a better, better cost. Alrighty, so I think we'll call it there. I like the progress that we've made. I'm going to actually grab a card and write down this color progression so I don't forget it, because we all know I will. Never assume you will remember anything in between one painting session to the next, especially if you're working on more than one model. If you've gone way outside of your usual colors in creating a hue. This is very close to leather brown, by the way, but it's still a little bit more saturated. So again, there's a big difference. Sometimes you need something just a little bit more punchy. Blorf mugs on Zazzle. We'd need a high-res Blorf, though. I think the Blorf was created for an emote, and so it's probably not high-res. I don't know. Did you create that one, Trash? You know the Blorf guy? Yeah. You'd have to do a high-res Blorf for me. And then we can put on the saying on the other side, to Blorf is human. I think that works. I'm willing to put some Painting Big stuff up on Zazzle. Do you guys think Zazzle is the best platform? Like, do you have an opinion as to what platform you like to buy stuff like that on? While I write down all these colors. So we started with oiled leather. Probably, and then Osirian. And then sun yellow in a 4-2-1, and then this plus small amounts of 3-1 russet to brown liner. Plus one tiny bit extra russet. And then here, 2 brush holes base plus 2 Osirian and tiny bit sun yellow. You like Zazzle personally? Yeah, Zazzle's the best. Zazzle's the awesome. Zazzle's what I need to write down. Yeah, if you can get me a big blorf trash, then I'll look into Zazzle. If you have time, you know. Like we all are stretched for time and have lots of stuff. Yeah, maybe possibly TeePublic is offering a better margin. Zazzle and Redbubble. Yeah, I like Redbubble too, but Redbubble does not offer a great margin. They're a bit more expensive for the artist, I believe. Their quality is good, but then these days I find Zazzle's quality to be pretty good too. These days a lot of the t-shirt companies are all kind of the same. On Republic don't wear as well? Okay, that's good to know. So that's probably it though, is like if they're using a cheaper t-shirt, they can offer a better margin to companies, and so then you go to TeePublic. But if you want a higher quality shirt, then maybe you go to Zazzle, but you don't make as much because you're paying for the high quality shirt. That's the way it works. I mean, that's the way it usually works. Hi, Keeks. Is it time, Keeks? Is it time? Is it time? Come on up. Come on up. Come on up. Come up. Yeah, you can do it. Good girl. Yay. Yay. Good girl. Yeah, CJ's going to come and give you your WALK. He is. Mwah. Hee hee. There's my doglet. There's my doglet. Yes, my doglet. Oh, it's my good girl. There we go. Good girl. Designs wear off quick, they peel. Yeah. I always wash them inside out and dry them inside out, and that helps, I think. Yep. All right, everybody. Kiki says, hi, everybody. Time for me to get my stuff. Yeah, is it time for you to be engaged with again? Yay! She's such a sweetie sometimes. She's going to be a big sweetie. She's going to be a big sweetie when she gets to be an adult. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks, everybody, for showing up. On Monday, we're going to do spookies. Maybe we'll just do witch on Monday. I'll probably do that, Quindy, while I'm prepping other stuff. So we'll just assume witch for Monday, and then we'll branch out to other spooky models. I have a dingo, so I'm going to put my dingo away. Dingo down, dingo. She's so sweet sometimes, but then it goes to like puppy nibbles really quick. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming in, and we will be spooky on Monday, and then we will progress with the month of October. I'm pretty happy with the way that Mermaid is coming along. That really helped. Like, the more we cover up, the more awesome it looks. Now I need to tighten up the scales, though. Like, I need to start tightening up everything now and popping it up to you know, the same level of finish so that I can get a real feeling for it. Yes, have a great weekend. I will be streaming tomorrow, remember, on Painting Big, twitch.tv/paintingbig. We'll be working on Owlbear, and that'll be around 3:30 p.m. USA Central Time. All right, everybody? Hope to see you there. All right. Have a good one. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.